We are obsessed with the highlight reel. History, by its nature, is a curation of the loudest, the strongest, and the most victorious. We know the giants. We know the Red Sea splitting in half. We know the walls of Jericho crumbling into dust. But the Bible is a massive, complex library. And for every David or Paul that dominates the Sunday school curriculum, there are dozens of figures hiding in the margins. Characters who appear for a single chapter, sometimes just a single verse, yet carry the entire theological weight of Scripture on their shoulders. You think you know this book, but you are likely missing the director's cut. The scenes that don't make the blockbuster trailers but contain the deepest emotional resonance. Today, we are going to ignore the kings and the apostles. We are going into the shadows to find the forgotten, the nameless, and the overlooked. These are the stories of profound wisdom intersecting with lethal stupidity, of courage found in the heart of a slave, and of grace given to those who expected execution. These are the Bible's most inspiring stories you have completely overlooked. Let's start in the heat of the Paran wilderness. This is the Wild West of the ancient world. Lawless, rugged, and dangerous. We find David here, not as a king, but as a desperate fugitive. He is leading a militia of 600 men, hungry, heavily armed, and living on the edge of violence. For months, they have been acting as a shadow security force for a wealthy tycoon named Nabal. They protected his shepherds and his massive flocks from bandits and predators, effectively acting as a wall of iron around his property. When sheep shearing season arrived, which is essentially payday in the ancient Near East, David sent 10 men to ask for a tip, a simple request for food in exchange for months of protection. But Nabal wasn't just a wealthy man. He was a catastrophe of a human being. The Hebrew word Nabal literally translates to fool, and he lives up to it. He doesn't just say no, he sneers. He insults David's lineage. He screams, "Who is this son of Jesse? Why should I take my bread and my water and give it to men coming from who knows where?" When David hears this, something in him snaps. This isn't the gentle psalmist. This is the warlord. He barks a single command: "Strap on your swords." 400 men draw steel. They begin a forced march with one objective: genocide. David swears an oath that by sunrise, he will massacre every single male in Nabal's household. A massacre is hours away. Enter Abigail. She is Nabal's wife, described as intelligent and beautiful, trapped in a marriage with a man who is essentially a walking death wish. A servant, terrified of the approaching army, runs to her and spills the truth. Most people would panic. Most would pack a bag and run. Abigail goes into high-gear crisis management. She doesn't consult her husband. She raids her own pantry. Just look at the inventory she compiles: 200 loaves of bread, 2 skins of wine, 5 dressed sheep, bushels of roasted grain, clusters of raisins, and cakes of figs. This isn't a snack. It's a peace treaty on the back of donkeys. She rides out to the canyon, intercepting the angry militia. When she sees David, blood in his eyes, hand on his sword, she doesn't cower. She dismounts and performs a masterclass in diplomacy. She falls at his feet and takes the blame. "Let this guilt be on me," she says. She validates David's anger, but reframes his future. She tells him essentially, "You are going to be king. Do you really want your first act to be the slaughter of a fool? Do you want that blood on your resume?" She appeals to his legacy, not just his mercy. It works. The rage drains out of David. He realizes this woman just saved him from committing a horrific sin. He blesses her, accepts the food, and turns his army around. But the story has one final, chilling twist. Abigail returns home to find Nabal drunk at a banquet. She waits until morning, when he is sober, to tell him how close he came to annihilation. When he hears the news, the Bible says his heart failed him, and he became like a stone, likely a massive stroke induced by shock. 10 days later, he was dead. Abigail didn't just survive. She navigated a path between a fool and a warlord with nothing but wisdom. It forces us to ask, are we reacting to the fools in our lives with anger? Or are we diffusing chaos with the kind of wisdom that saves households? From the wilderness of Paran, we move north to the military superpower of Aram. We meet Naaman, the commander of the army. This man is a celebrity. He is a 5-star general, a national hero, wealthy and powerful. But under his polished armor, there is a rotting secret. Naaman has leprosy. In the ancient world, this is a slow-motion death sentence. It is a skin disease that eats away at your nerves and flesh, turning you into a social pariah. Naaman is a great man, but he is decomposing while he walks. The solution to his problem doesn't come from a king or a doctor. It comes from a casualty of war. Serving in Naaman's house is a little girl, a slave captured during a raid on Israel. Let's pause and unpack the psychology here. This girl was ripped from her parents. She was dragged to a foreign land. She is serving the wife of the man who led the army that likely destroyed her village. She has every right to hate him. She has every right to watch him rot and think, "Good, this is justice." But she doesn't. In a moment of shocking compassion, she whispers to her mistress, "If only my master would see the prophet who is in Samaria, he would cure him of his leprosy." She believes in the power of her God so much that she wants her enemy to experience it. This tiny sentence sets off an international diplomatic incident. Kings exchange letters. Caravans are loaded with silver and gold. Naaman travels to Israel, expecting a royal reception from the prophet Elisha. Instead, Elisha doesn't even come to the door. He sends a messenger to tell this proud general, "Go wash in the Jordan River 7 times. Naaman is insulted. The Jordan is a muddy, dirty creek compared to the crystal-clear rivers of Damascus. He almost rides away in a rage, his pride nearly costing him his life. But his servants, again, the people in the margins, talk him down. If he asked you to do a hard thing, you would have done it. Why not this simple thing? So the general strips off his armor. He walks into the brown water. 1 dip, nothing. 2 dips, still rotting. Imagine the doubt creeping in by the 5th or 6th time, but on the 7th rise, the miracle happens. His skin is restored like that of a young boy. The physical healing is incredible, but the spiritual shift is greater. The enemy commander declares that there is no God but the God of Israel. And the catalyst for this geopolitical shift? Not a sermon, not a sword, but the forgiveness of a nameless, enslaved child who chose compassion over bitterness. Let's fast forward. King Saul is dead. Jonathan is dead. David is now the undisputed king of Jerusalem. In the ancient Near East, when a new dynasty took over, the rule was simple. Purge the old bloodline. You kill every son, cousin, and nephew of the former king to prevent a rebellion. It was brutal, but it was standard politics. But David breaks the script. He asks, "Is there anyone still left of the house of Saul to whom I can show kindness?" He is told about Mephibosheth. The story of Mephibosheth is a tragedy wrapped in trauma. When he was 5 years old, news broke that his father and grandfather were killed in battle. His nurse, in a panic to save him from the expected purge, picked him up and ran, but she dropped him. The fall shattered his legs. He has been crippled ever since, living in a place called Lo Debar. The name literally translates to no pasture. It is a wasteland. He is living in obscurity, hiding from the king, waiting to die. When soldiers knock on his door and drag him to the palace, Mephibosheth is terrified. He assumes this is his execution. He is carried into the throne room and throws himself on the floor. But David doesn't pull a sword. He says, "Do not be afraid." He restores the family fortune to him, but then he goes further. He says, "You will always eat at my table." Mephibosheth's response breaks your heart. "What is your servant that you should notice a dead dog like me?" He views himself as worthless refuse, but David views him as a son. The narrative ends with a beautiful, poignant image. Mephibosheth lived in Jerusalem and ate at the king's table. And the text reminds us one last time. And he was lame in both his feet. The grace didn't fix his legs. It changed his status. He sat at the table with the king's own children, his crippled feet hidden under the tablecloth, feasting not because he earned it, but because the king invited him. It is perhaps the most perfect picture of grace in the entire Old Testament. Finally, we go to the dying days of Jerusalem. The Babylonians are at the gates. The city is starving. The prophet Jeremiah is preaching a message of surrender, and the city officials hate him for it. They accuse him of treason and decide to silence him. They lower Jeremiah into a cistern, a water storage pit. But there is no water, only deep, sucking mud. Jeremiah sinks into the mire. He is left there to starve, surrounded by darkness and filth. The king is weak. The officials are murderous. No one speaks up, except for one man, Ebed-Melech. His name means servant of the king, but he is an outsider, a Cushite from Ethiopia. He is a foreigner working in the palace. He has no political capital, yet he risks everything. He marches up to the weak King Zedekiah and publicly accuses the officials of wickedness. The prophet will die of hunger if he stays there, he argues. The king relents and gives Ebed-Melech 30 men to attempt a rescue. Now, watch the detail here. Ebed-Melech goes to the clothing storage and finds old rags and worn-out clothes. Why? Because when he lowers the ropes to Jeremiah, he shouts down, "Put these rags under your arms to pad the ropes." He knew that hauling a man out of deep mud would cause the ropes to cut into his flesh. In the middle of a siege, with death on the doorstep, this foreigner took the time to ensure the prophet wasn't in pain during the rescue. It is a moment of tenderness in a violent world. Jeremiah is pulled to safety, and God notices. When the city eventually falls and the palace is burned, God sends a specific word to Ebed-Melech. "I will rescue you because you trusted in me." The insider officials died. The outsider who showed compassion was saved. Abigail, the slave girl, Mephibosheth, Ebed-Melech. These aren't the names on the billboards. They are the footnotes. But they teach us that God's history is not written by the powerful. It is written by the wise, the forgiving, the broken, and the brave. If you feel like your life is happening in the margins, take heart. That is exactly where the most important stories are told. Which of these 4 stories hit you the hardest? Or is there another hidden gem in the Bible that you think needs to be told? Let's talk about it in the comments. And if you want to keep digging deeper into the history you thought you knew, hit that subscribe button.